I'm going to go ahead and jump right in since today's a short one today. And I'm kind of excited for this one too. All right. All right. Okay, bonjour. So since I mentioned last week that today's going to be only 30 minutes long, since we have the last South African event later today, which will be fun if you can go to. But today I want to talk about French soccer or French football, which I think most of the world calls it, except for us. All right. So word of the day, bleu. I hope that one's more easy to guess what this is, but it just means blue or blues, plural. I say this because, all right, so the French, so today I'm going to be talking more of like the men's national team. There's a bunch of different like teams and clubs around France. And of course, there's the women's team, but I want to more focus on the men's national team. So their team name is called Les Bleus, which is the blue, and their symbol is the rooster. Not really sure why, but it's the rooster, or le coq in French. And so the symbol here on the left is like, I don't know, like their emblem that you have like on their jerseys and sweatshirts and stuff like that. So it has the 2 stars up at the top, and that's because of the times that they won the World Cup in 1998 and 2018. And then the bottom is FFF. It is the French football, or the French Football Federation. All conveniently F's in English as well. And the bottom right picture here is the 2018 World Cup win. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I wanted to go through, this website has a lot of useful information that I just wanted to run through. I realized I started really fast. I'm talking really fast. I'm going to slow it down. So football facts, 7 things you must know about France. And again, you'll see a lot of the sources and videos that I'll bring up today is in 2018, because that's really when the spike of the French team came, because they won the World Cup. So there's a lot of 2018 information. So I'm going to skip that first one. Number 1, the legacy. So it talks about a little bit of the kind of like this, not stigma, but the reputation of the headbutt in France. I think I mentioned it maybe in one of the early French hours, but it's one of like the top French, sorry, I'm trying to talk and type at the same time. One of the best like French football or soccer players there is, and he just like headbutted a guy during a World Cup. They didn't win that one, but let's try this one.
This seaside Verbo is about to play host to an unforgettable vacation memory. That game of cards that Grandpa somehow...
Handball there. They're going to quickly try and restart it, but a man is down for Italy as well here in the 109th minute. So Elizondo is back to take a look. And calling for some attention. And he and Zidane have really been going at it. This happened away from the ball, so right now we're trying to get a look at who may be down. Let's take a look here. Oh, wow.
I would look at that. I think it's so
Marco
cool. Like, there must have been a lot of force to that if you just knocked a man straight down from a headbutt to the chest. So this guy, great soccer player, he was actually in the World Cup that won in 1998 for France. But I think this was after they did the World Cup. But anyways, that was the whole reputation of the French team before then. So that's what they were talking about there. However, in the last few years, Les Bleus have made a comeback. They made it to the final during the last Euro Cup in France. So number 2, here are the list of like the top current. Here it is. French players can be found in the best clubs of the European leagues. Here are some of the most known names. I don't know too much about all the European leagues and stuff like that. I don't know if you're a huge soccer fan, Roger, or sports or stuff like that. But I guess it's like you can represent your country by nationality, but then you can play for different club teams during, I guess, like their off season or when there's not a World Cup going on. So that's why you can see Paul Pogba. So he plays for the French national team, but then he plays for the Manchester United club team, so which is not in France. So you can kind of see how they kind of go to different club teams. The biggest French club team is what's called the PSG in French, which is the Paris one. So I just wanted to show this list, take a look at all the different names. This kind of introduces the main topic of today, but you'll kind of see how these names don't all look pretty French. Like obviously Paul is a pretty French name. Olivier is very French as well, Hugo. But a lot of the other ones don't look very French, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The ones I know the most from this list is Paul Pogba and Mbappe. He definitely rose to fame in the last 2018 World Cup. He was 19 years old when they won the World Cup, and he was like the star of the show. Style of attack. Just kind of wanted to be quick on this point. The coach, Didier, I guess is a former defensive midfielder. Again, played for different types of clubs outside of the French national team. Chelsea, Juventus, and Marseille in France. So that's him. Some vocabulary. I won't go through all of these, but it is interesting that they included this and said how French is spoken by approximately 220 million people all over the world in countries Belgium, Switzerland, Ivory Coast, Cameroon, and Algeria, and more. So it's cool, like if they were all to play together, they would all speak some French with each other. So some of these kind of look very similar in English, like defender, défenseur, captain, capitaine, and this one also seems pretty English too, prolongation or extra time. But this one is also very common outside of like soccer terms, because you'd use like le but for like, I don't know, if you're in a paper and you want to talk about like your goal or your focus for talking about a certain topic or something like that, you would talk about le but. And then, so pretty much the chant you would always hear if you were to watch a French national team is Allez les Bleus. So again, that's the team name, bleu, blue, and Allez means like go, to go. So let's go. There's a couple more. And then I'll show a picture of this in a sec, which I think is crazy. But so Champs-Élysées, if you remember, that's one of the monuments. That's the one that has like the crazy roundabout, the huge one, organized one, and it has like a little statue that looks kind of like that. Or not statue, but monument. So that's kind of like the hub where if something like crazy happens, that's where everyone goes to celebrate. I was trying to think of like an American equivalent of where people would go. I don't know if like Times Square. Yeah, one, Roger.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Would probably be Times Square.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope I'm sounding okay. You were kind of like delayed and staggered. I also just got a little pop-up saying my internet is unstable. So feel free to let me know if anything goes wrong with the internet. Just shout it out or put it in the chat box too. Let me pop that up so I don't miss it. But yeah, I guess Times Square, we kind of celebrate there, especially with what's it called, New Year's Eve. But to go back here, so here's the viewpoint if you're at the top of the Champs-Elysees, right? And you have those crazy roundabout at the bottom and this beautiful view of like the city. This is what it looks like. But then this is the next picture is what it looked like 2018 after they won the World Cup. It looks like that. So it's just a lot of people, a lot of celebration. I couldn't imagine it COVID times for such a pack of people, but that's just kind of the celebration and kind of like pride that they had when they won the World Cup.
If you look at a picture of New York Times Square at a time a couple years before COVID hit, this honestly looks like Times Square, just the buildings are shorter.
Yeah, so true.
It really does.
Yeah, so I think that is interesting. And I wonder, like size-wise, if this is maybe wider than the streets of New York would be, but in terms of people-wise, it looks just as congested. But yeah, so the next thing, I think what I have next is a video. So I'm gonna talk more into like nationality and kind of the background of a lot of the players. So here's like a 5-6 minute video of why France produces the most World Cup players, which I think is interesting.
Whoa, Susan.
Oh, I'm looking for coupon codes.
Well, Capital One Shopping instantly searches for available coupon codes and automatically applies them.
Save me some cheddar.
Capital One Shopping. It's kind of genius. What's in your wallet?
This is Portugal playing Morocco at the 2018 World Cup. Portugal was the heavy favorite and won the game 1-0. The result wasn't all that interesting, but this photo is. This Portugal player wasn't born in Portugal, and these Morocco players weren't born in Morocco. See, soccer's regulating body, FIFA, allows athletes to play for any nation they have a clear connection to, including the country a player's parents or grandparents are from. In this year's World Cup, 82 players are playing for countries they weren't born in. So, where are they coming from? If we plot it on a map, one country stands out. France is where the largest number of all World Cup players were born. Brazil has the next highest total, but it's not even close. France has had the most native players and coaches in the last 4 World Cups, and their dominance has been on the rise. So, what's so special about France? At the end of World War II, much of France was destroyed. The government began recruiting laborers from southern and eastern Europe, as well as colonies in northern Africa, to rebuild the country during the late 1940s and 1950s. During that time, France brought in more immigrants than any other European country, and in the 1960s and early 70s, France's economy grew rapidly, and a labor shortage led to another wave of immigrants, with even more arrivals from French colonies throughout Africa and the Caribbean. Many of them settled in major housing developments just outside of the major cities. At the same time, France was also in a sports crisis, especially the national football team. Between 1960 and 1974, France failed to qualify for 3 World Cups and 3 European Championships. The French Football Federation decided the way to get better was to create a national structure for developing talent, so it established one of Europe's first football academy systems. In 1972, a national training center was opened in Vichy, and 4 years later, the Federation worked with top French football clubs to set up a wider network of academies to recruit and train local youth. In 1988, the National Training Center moved to a forested suburb south of Paris called Clairefontaine, and by the early 1990s, this French soccer system was one of the best in the world, developing talented players all over France. And the system delivered results.
Forward. Zidane! Zidane again! Vieira, but he continues his run with Cardi from the back, and he scores!
In 1998, the French national team, called Les Bleus, won the World Cup, a moment that was celebrated throughout the country. And it seemed to be a breakthrough for French multiculturalism as well, since several players were either immigrants themselves or children of immigrants who came to France in the 20th century. The team was called Black Blanc Bleu, meaning black, white, Arab, a spin on the three colors of the French flag. But not everyone supported diversity, particularly nationalist politicians like Jean-Marie Le Pen.
Je trouve que c'est tout de même un peu artificiel de faire venir des joueurs de l'étranger et de les baptiser équipe de France. Je constate que les joueurs des autres équipes chantent leur hymne national de grand cœur et à pleine voix. Alors je constate que la plupart des joueurs de l'équipe de France ne le chantent pas ou visiblement ne le savent pas.
Despite racist criticism, players from immigrant families have continued to make up more and more of France's best talent. Many come from one place in particular. 38% of immigrants to France settle in Greater Paris. Most end up in these areas, called banlieue. The French word literally means suburb, but it can also imply immigrant-dominated ghettos. Over the years, these areas have frequently seen riots. They have high levels of unemployment, crime, and poverty, and are in a crisis. Yet the banlieue continue to produce some of the most talented soccer players. That's because this is where France's immigration history meets its soccer system, and it's the reason why the city is the world's #1 talent pool for soccer. Since 2002, the number of Parisian-born players at the World Cup has continued to rise. Out of all French players at the 2018 World Cup, 16 were born or raised in Greater Paris, and the French national team has 8. That includes Kylian Mbappe, France's 19-year-old superstar who was born to an Algerian mother and Cameroonian father in the Parisian suburb of Bondy and was trained through the French system at Clairefontaine. But Parisian players don't just play for France. Over the years, FIFA's eligibility rules have allowed them to play for countries like the Ivory Coast, Morocco, Algeria, Portugal, Cameroon, and Togo. 4 players on this year's Senegal team are from the Greater Paris area, as well as this player on Tunisia. And remember this photo? Both of these players were born in Paris. That's what's special about French soccer. The combination of an established academy system and its unique immigration history is producing incredible talent for France and the rest of the world.
So I liked this video a lot because I thought it was a good geographical, historical background of a lot of the soccer players in the World Cup. So if you notice those, when I was giving clips of the 1998 World Cup, the guy who was doing all the headbutts over here, same guy that was doing literally the headbutt on a person. So anyways, he's very well known, but also for soccer. Zidane. And then also when you saw this clip over here, this was Champs-Élysées in 1998.
In 1998, the French national team, called Les Bleus, won the World Cup, a moment that was celebrated throughout the country. And it seemed to be a breakthrough for French multiculturalism as well, since...
Oh, that was really fast. But if you saw at the end, you got a little clip of half the arc in the Champs-Élysées. But yeah, so it's an interesting topic of kind of nationality and then where you can play in sports and stuff like that. I don't know a lot about other international sports, if they kind of have the same system of where people can play or where they're allowed to play and stuff like that. So that's just kind of an introduction, and you can see how a lot of them have different immigrant nationalities and backgrounds and ethnicities, but they can still play for France because they were born and raised in France. But so I have a clip here. So this chart was kind of cool. So this is not just the French national team, but French-born soccer players by citizenship. And you can see only France is not even half of that portion. And you can see a lot of them are from African countries, and this yellow, and then red, this is more Caribbean, green, South America, and then blue, Europe. So it's pretty diverse. And these are French-born soccer players. Even though they have French citizenship, this is kind of their background. A lot of them aren't just French. So you can imagine, especially from the topic of last week, it struck up a lot of kind of controversy and kind of rubbed people the wrong way. So I have some clips here. This came up in, again, the 2018 World Cup. So this is actually the 1998 team. And you see, this is the French team, but they called it for Africa because a lot of them represented Africa. This next one, I think this is really cool. This is the team of 2018. I keep getting those dates confused because they're both ending with 8. But it kind of shows all of the African heritage by players. This guy, Congolese father, born in Cameroon, Guinean parents, Cameroon father, Algerian mother, and the list keeps going down. So even if they weren't born in France, so like this guy was born in the Congo, and this guy up here born in Cameroon, a lot of them have a lot of African immigrant parents, but they were born and raised in France, so technically they can play for the French team. So a lot of people, a lot of people didn't like it. There was a whole movement when they won in 2018 of people saying like, oh, finally Africa won the World Cup. And then of course that made the French angry. But then they're saying, anyways, it struck a lot of like cultural identity issues and topics for all of that. So this last clip I have, I think we have enough time, is Trevor Noah. So he kind of talked about it. He'll talk about it actually. Let me not talk too much about what he says. He'll just explain it. But yeah.
I wanted to share this little story with you. I got into a little bit of trouble with the French government. I know, the French government. So what happened was, let's start at the beginning. France won the World Cup. And so on the show, we celebrated that, and I had this joke where I said Africa won the World Cup. Right? Yeah. And I was shocked at how angry a lot of French people got. Like genuinely, a lot of French people were angry, and they were like, "Oh, Trevor, how can you say this? Why will you say these things? You know, this is horrible." And I was like, "Okay, I get it. Like, not everyone likes every joke that you tell, and I get that." But this was interesting. I got a letter from the ambassador of France, and I'll read it to you. It was about that joke, and he says, I'll try to read it how I hope he wrote it, which was, he says, "Sir, I watched with great attention your July 17th show when you spoke of the victory of the French team at the 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia final, which took place last Sunday. I heard your words about an African victory. Nothing could be less true." Now, first of all, I think it could have been less. I could have said they were Scandinavian. That would have been less true. That would have been less true. He says, "As many of the players have already stated themselves, their parents may have come from another country, but the great majority of them, all but 2 out of 23, were born in France. They were educated in France. They learned to play soccer in France. They are French citizens. They are proud of their country, France. The rich and various backgrounds of these players is a reflection of France's diversity. France is indeed," now that line there was interesting, "the rich and various backgrounds of these players is a reflection of France's diversity." Now, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but I think it's more a reflection of France's colonialism. Because it's not like it's just like random play, like they all have something in common. like all of those players, if you trace their lineage, you're like, how did you guys become French? Like, how did your family start speaking French? Oh, okay, all right. They say here, he says, France is indeed a cosmopolitan country, but every citizen is part of the French identity, and together they belong to the nation of France. Unlike in the United States of America, France does not refer to its citizens based on their race, religion, or origin. To us, there is no hyphenated identity. Roots are an individual reality. By calling them an African team, it seems you are denying their Frenchness. This, even in jest, legitimizes the ideology which claims whiteness as the only definition of being French. So now, here's the thing. All right, first things first. I understand what he's saying, because I read up on this afterwards, right? I take criticism. I'll listen to what somebody says to me. You know, I genuinely believe you should. And what it turns out is, in France, a lot of like Nazis in that country use the fact that these players are of African descent to shit on their Frenchness, you know? So they go, you're not French. You're from Africa. Go back to where you came from. You're not French. They use that as you know, as a line of attack. Now, my opinion is, coming from South Africa, coming from Africa, and even watching the World Cup in the United States of America, black people all over the world were celebrating the Africanness of the French players, right? Not in a negative way, but rather in a positive way, going, look at these Africans who can become French. You know what I mean? It's a celebration of that achievement. And so this is what I find weird in these arguments, is that people go, they're not African, they're French. Then I'm like, why can't they be both? Right? Why is that duality only afforded to a select group of people? Why can they not be African? So what they're arguing here is, in order to be French, you have to erase everything that is African? Because what do they mean when they say that? Our culture, our this, like, so you cannot be French and African at the same time, which I vehemently disagree with. I go, you've seen those players, I love them. Paul Pogba, N'Golo Kante, I've watched all of them. Like, I love those players, and I love how African they are and how French they are. I don't take their Frenchness away, but I also don't think you need to take their Africanness away. You know, and that is what I love about America. America's not a perfect country, but what I love about this place is that people can still celebrate their identity in their Americanness. You can go to a St. Patrick's Day parade in America celebrating that you are Irish. You can go to a Puerto Rican Day parade in America still celebrating the fact that you're Puerto Rican and American at the same time. You can celebrate Juneteenth as a black person and be like, yo, I'm African American, which is the duality of the two worlds. But here they're going, no, you are only French. And here's
So I'll stop it there. So again, this topic, I know it's about sports, but it touches on a lot of different things like identity and ethnicity and nationality and all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting, and it was definitely raised in 2018. But I felt like it was super rushed, so I'm sorry for doing so. But I really did want to talk about this. But if you have any thoughts or comments on all of this, you're more than welcome to discuss. But also, you don't have to.
To be honest, out of all this, the only thing I've been thinking about this whole time, I mean, I really like Trevor's stuff. He's really good at what he does. But out of all this, I'm just curious to know, what's the difference between Gaelic football and French football? Have they ever played against each other together?
I don't know.
That would be something interesting for you and Kaylin to discuss. Maybe work out a joint conversation one day.
Yeah, write that down. Because I always assumed like Gaelic football is kind of like, it's different. Definitely not the same as like soccer/football that we know. But I do wonder, I mean, that's a good point. I do wonder if they can ever combine, or if anyone has ever like gone from the national Gaelic team to playing national football or something like that in Europe. So that is interesting. That is cool. I know that, I feel like I'm going to get it wrong, but Gaelic football is not the same as hurling. And I know Kaylin's going to talk about hurling in I think 2 weeks.
Yeah, hurling is more like lacrosse.
Okay,
So,
right.
So yeah, so the Gaelic football is actually really similar to soccer. I think he said that they actually can use their hands at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly all the rules, but it would be interesting to know, like, if they've ever internationally played against other teams with rules.
Yeah, or like even if France or any other countries also play Gaelic football, or if it's like strictly just Irish. That is interesting. I wonder. I'll ask him about that. I haven't seen him in a while, but I think I'll see him tomorrow. And yeah, well, cool. I like that you raise things I don't even think about, and then I want to research on, but then normally forget. But it's okay. Let me stop the sharing. Well, cool. Thanks for coming, Roger. I need to tell Kaylin that there's only 2 conversation hour weeks left because I know you guys start finals kind of soon. So I think that's why we kind of take a break from that so you guys can do your exams and study and stuff like that. But cool. Merci. Thanks for coming as always. And I'm going to hop over to the South African one. You're more than welcome to too. Let me know if you don't have the links for that one.
I've actually got class at 1:00, so
okay, totally okay. So you can take this time to eat or just relax before you do class. So that's good. Yeah. But yeah, all right. Well, hope you have a good weekend, one weekend, and hopefully see you next week for the second to last conversation hour.
All right.
Okay. Bye.